Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another Disney Vacation Club discussion. So today we're talking DVC Resale again. I know we just talked about DVC Resale, but I really wanted to dig in a little bit deeper with this topic, especially because some of you had some great things to say and really interesting things to say as well. In fact, some of them got me thinking and started talking to Russ, and before you know it, numbers were being written down. So that's actually what I want to sit down and talk to you about today. I want to crunch some numbers on DVC Resale and just see what the savings actually looks like, and if it's a savings at all. Because don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people out there who have a lot to say about how much you can save, but very few of them take the time to actually provide the numbers. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk numbers just like we've been talking about numbers with other DVC things in the past. So buckle up, get your pencils ready. I'll just tell you right now, as a bit of a spoiler alert, it's very interesting. You might be surprised at the numbers that we come to here throughout this discussion. But okay, before we jump in, we need to set some ground rules. First and foremost, I just want to remind everyone who's come to this discussion today that this is in fact a discussion. I'm sharing some thoughts and information. You're welcome to share those thoughts and information in the comments down below. But here's the thing. I know there are some of you who have some very strong opinions about DVC Resale, and that's fine. Have strong opinions about whatever you want to have strong opinions on. I do too. But this is a conversation. We're sharing perspectives. We might not necessarily agree with each other, but we're going to be respectful. So I just want to put that out there just real quick, because I know there are a few of you out there who are a bit too comfortable with judging other people's decisions. We're not doing that. But with that out of the way, let's talk about a few more things that you need to be aware of before we jump into this discussion. First and foremost, all of the numbers that we're working with today, I found today. And especially when we talk about the resale contracts that we're gonna look at, they might not be available by the time that you're seeing this. Things may have changed. So just keep that in mind. Also, numbers are going to change throughout the entire process of deciding whether or not DVC is for you. But we're gonna assume that we're making this purchase today. Also, just like in other DVC discussions that we've had, we're working with 175 points. I think that this just makes it easier to compare and contrast numbers, especially if you go to previous discussions. So that's why we're sticking with that number today as well. Now, like I said, we have sat down and discussed DVC before, and I encourage you to go check that out if you want to learn more about DVC. We've talked about the realities of DVC and the new cabins as well as resale, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. So let's do a quick recap of what exactly DVC Resale is. If you're thinking about being a Disney Vacation Club member, there are two ways that you can go about becoming a member. The first is to purchase your DVC contracts or your real estate interest directly from Disney Vacation Club. This is known as purchasing DVC Direct. The other option is to purchase a resale contract. In this case, you're purchasing from a Disney Vacation Club member versus Disney Vacation Club itself. More often than not, you're also going through a broker. Now, whether you're purchasing DVC Direct or resale, the fundamental aspects of your Disney Vacation Club membership are going to be the same. You're going to purchase a certain number of points, and you're going to be able to use those points to stay at Disney Vacation Club properties. However, there are some important differences between DVC Direct membership and DVC Resale membership. Now, they include things like limitations as to where you can use your Disney Vacation Club points, but also an inability to have certain perks and benefits like membership events and discounts. We talked about this a little bit in our previous discussion, and I'm sure that we're going to dig into the differences of DVC membership when it comes to being a direct member or a resale member in the future. But it's really important to keep in mind that they're not the same. And I know that there are a lot of people who have pushed back on this, some in the comment section of our last discussion. And I understand that maybe these things, these differences aren't important to you. You don't really care. So you're a DVC resale member anyway. That's totally fine. No judgment there. You do what's best for you. However, we're here to have that discussion and help people figure out what's right for them. So we can't ignore that there are some major differences here. And especially if you're purchasing DVC resale today, it's important to understand that you're going to be limited, especially when it comes to where you can stay, which is probably the biggest downside to buying DVC resale. Now, of course, we can discuss all of this in great detail later, but for now, I do want to pop this chart up here and show you what you don't have access to if you are DVC via third-party resale versus a Disney Vacation Club member who purchased direct. But all right, now that everyone's all caught up, let's get into numbers. So I wanted to look for contracts that had 175 points. I know that you can mix and match and whatever, I just wanted to keep things easy for today's discussion. And I found 3 separate contracts with 175 points: Polynesian, Old Key West, and Copper Creek. Now we're gonna look at all of the numbers in detail here in a second, but Polynesian came in at around 27,000, Old Key West at 15,000, and Copper Creek at around 23,000. Now when most people focus on DVC resale or purchasing DVC in general, this is the number that they're focusing on. The cost it's going to be to buy whatever number of points you're looking for. And this makes perfect sense also as a reminder, because you can choose how many points you're going to purchase, this number will fluctuate because it is, after all, a price per point times the number of points that you want to purchase. But this isn't the only thing that we need to factor in when it comes to what our Disney Vacation Club membership is going to cost. And I feel like this is where a lot of people kind of gloss over, especially when we're talking about resale. The bulk of the expense when it comes to your Disney Vacation Club membership is going to come from your annual dues. Annual dues are charged per point. So there will be like an $8 per point fee for annual dues or maintenance. This is the amount of money that all Disney Vacation Club members, direct or resale, are going to be charged annually for any number of things. And it's important to keep in mind that this is going to go up annually. But we're not going to take that into consideration today, just like we haven't taken it into consideration for previous discussions, mainly because I have no idea how much they're going to charge you in the future. So we're going to go off of 2024 numbers just for the sake of discussion, but we're going to do that with the understanding that these annual dues will go up annually. Now, this is where the math comes in. So we're going to take the cost of the membership plus the annual dues, multiply them by the length of the contract, and see how much this is actually going to cost you, not only for the duration of the contract that you're purchasing resale, but also per year. I know it's a lot, so let me pull this chart up for you. Now for the Polynesian, for this resale contract of 175 points, you'll see that they are asking $27,475 or about $157 per point. Now the Polynesian expires in 2066. That's 42 years from now. And currently annual dues are $8.23 per point or $1,440 per year, which gives us a total price over the next 42 years of $87,965 or $2,094 per year. Now, if we look at Old Key West, this is a really enticing contract because it's only $15,225 or $87 per point. However, Old Key West expires in 2042. That's only 18 years from now. This is definitely going to be one of those details that's important to keep in mind because you'll only have your membership for so long, and that's really going to play a role in how much we're paying annually for this DVC resale contract. Now, annual dues over at Old Key West are $9.87 per point or $1,727 per year, meaning that the total price for our contract is $26,315 over the length of the contract, which will be 18 years. Now, when you divide that up, that's $2,573 per year, which is pretty pricey. Actually, it's a little bit more pricey than you might expect, especially with a buy-in that's so low. You know, only $15,000. It's not that big a deal, right? Certainly not compared to some of these other contracts that start much higher, but you're getting much less time. Now, for Copper Creek, they're asking $23,625 or $135 per point. This one expires in 2068, so 44 years from now. Annual dues are $8.09 per point, and that gives us $1,416 per year. So the total over the next 44 years is $85,978 or about $1,995 per year. But how does that stack up when we look at a direct contract? Because it's all well and good to look at just these resale contracts, but let's compare them to a direct contract. In fact, let's compare them to two. We've been talking about the cabins at Fort Wilderness recently and the Riviera, the two newest Disney Vacation Club properties. So let's look at the same numbers, including those two as well. Now, if you've joined us for previous discussions, you've seen us work numbers for Fort Wilderness cabins and Riviera before, but I've I've popped in some of the most important numbers here just so that we can compare them to those resale contracts. So at the Fort Wilderness Cabins, the buy-in with discounts, which are currently running, is $37,625. That's around $259 per point. Annual dues for 2024 are $2,182 a year, which when we crunch all those numbers brings us to $2,880 a year for the length of that contract, which in this case is going to be 50 years. Now over at Riviera, it is $37,450, about $214 per point. Dues are $1,549, or what ends up being about $2,362 a year. Now, if we look at all of these numbers right alongside each other, it's actually kind of interesting to see how much each will cost you per year. Of course, we have $2,094 for the Poly, $1,954 for Copper Creek, $2,573 for Old Key West, $2,880 for the Cabins, and $2,362 for Riviera, which I think is super interesting, especially when you consider how expensive Old Key West is compared to these newer properties, especially the Riviera. Now, I've had a lot to say about the Riviera in the past, but when it comes to this discussion and looking into being a Disney Vacation Club member, I feel like this is the best choice if you're looking at buying direct right now, especially because you do have such a long contract. You got 46 years, and unlike the Cabins, you have a much bigger variety of rooms at Riviera. I also think that the Riviera is the fairest comparison when looking at the Poly, Copper Creek, and Old Key West, just because there are so many room types at those other resorts as well. Or at least there will be, because the Poly, you know, they're building the tower, but at least Copper Creek and Old Key West are the fairest of comparisons. Now, just as a reminder, of course, we're talking about purchasing resale. The Polynesian, Copper Creek, and Old Key West numbers that we're looking at right now are resale contracts. And if you decided to purchase any of these today, you're going to have some limitations. Again, I know a lot of people who reference resale restrictions think that it only applies to the resort that currently has resale restrictions, which is the Riviera. But that's not entirely true. No matter who purchased resale after 2019 or where their home resort is, there will be restrictions on where you can stay, meaning the Riviera and newer properties, they're off the list for you. And so I think that that's really important to keep in mind, especially as we continue down this road of newer DVC properties hitting the market. But let's take a second, go back and look at some of these numbers, because I honestly found this really interesting. So of course we have the 5 contracts up here, and I do think that it's super interesting that the Riviera is more affordable than Old Key West, but then again, I'm not really surprised. It's just so interesting to see the buy-in be so low and yet the price that you're paying per year be so high. But quite frankly, if we look at all of these different options, there's really not that big a difference between them. I think the biggest difference is what Copper Creek and Fort Wilderness Cabins, which are about $1,000 more per year to be at the Cabins. And don't get me wrong, I know that that is a lot of money for families, especially over a length of time, but still, annually, it's not as big of a difference as some of you might expect. I know I didn't expect it when I was crunching these numbers. And of course, like I said, if you purchase direct, you purchase Riviera, it is going to be cheaper, you're going to have a longer contract, and you're not going to have restrictions. Though, if someone wants to purchase your contract, maybe you want to sell it after so long, that contract will have restrictions on it. So the next person will have restrictions and will only be able to stay at the Riviera. That's a whole nother discussion for another day. Quite frankly, I think that purchasing resale at a place that has resale restrictions isn't necessarily the best idea, of course, unless you really like staying there. But there's so much more to that discussion that we're not going to get into today, because we could be here for another hour. Now, speaking of crunching numbers, I know that at least one of you out there is going to say, well, hold on a second, Kat. You're not taking into account that the contract length is much shorter for Old Key West, which was our second most expensive example here today. And even though you're paying more per year, you're paying for less years, ultimately paying less. Yeah, sure. I'm not going to argue with that. But if the intention is to get the same thing for less, maybe you plan on buying other resale contracts in the future, I think you're going to run into this same problem and you might end up paying more in the long run, especially if you intend to be a Disney Vacation Club member for a long stretch of time. Now, that said, if this works for you, it works for you, and that's fantastic. It fits your budget, your travel habits, all of that. But I think we have to be fair here when we discuss these things, because it's not really the same type of major savings that some people make it out to be, especially those people out there who are piecing contracts together to keep their membership going. Now, I know that I'm focusing a lot on Old Key West in comparison to Riviera because, you know, it's the most affordable, or at least it looks like the most affordable compared to the newest resort, aside from the cabins, the newest fairest comparison of a resort, if you will. But Copper Creek was also on the list of what was available today. And quite frankly, I think that it could be a fantastic option. I mean, it's just under $2,000 a year. There's still 44 years left on that contract. So if I were looking for a resale contract today and didn't care about all of the perks and benefits that I won't have access to, or the limitations that mean I won't be able to stay at Riviera or newer properties, I feel like this could be a great option. And I'm sure that there are other great options that hit the market every now and again, especially if you're looking at different contracts at different sizes, you know, different numbers of points. Again, we just stuck to 175 points today for the sake of keeping everything neat and tidy for all of our numbers over our discussions that we've been having. But there's one more thing that we need to talk about when it comes to purchasing a resale contract, and that is right of first refusal. Now, there's probably a more eloquent way for me to describe right of first refusal, but essentially it's Disney Vacation Club's ability to purchase this contract out from underneath you when you're in the process of buying it from that other DVC member who's selling it to you. And Disney Vacation Club has 30 days to do that. So all of these numbers look fantastic. You love everything. We've settled on Copper Creek. That's what we're gonna buy. We start the process. Disney says, sorry, it's not gonna work. And then they take the contract and you end up with nothing. This is a really important thing to keep in mind, especially if you're thinking about buying resale, because you may well settle on a contract and not be able to actually get it, and that starts the process all over again. So it's another thing to keep in mind in the whole huge laundry list of things to keep in mind when it comes to purchasing DVC or DVC resale. I feel like that list grows and grows every time that we sit down and chat. But anyway, I know that we have been sitting here discussing this for quite a while, and I'm sure that you have a ton to say. So let me know your thoughts in a comment down below. Are you surprised by these numbers? I was when I pulled them up. I didn't realize that when you actually crunched everything, it was going to be as expensive as it was to purchase some of these contracts resale, even though I was aware that dues really make up a bulk of what you're paying as a Disney Vacation Club member. I don't know, took me by surprise. So let me know, did it take you by surprise? What are your thoughts? Does this little example change your mind one way or another? Pop it in the comments down below. But with that, I suppose that this is the perfect opportunity to wrap up this discussion. As always, I appreciate you joining me and just hanging out, hearing what I have to say and contributing to the conversation. It is honestly so amazing to hear all of your stories and hear what you guys have to say. And I really do think that it helps people figure out what they want to do with DVC. So keep it up. Also, speaking of thumbs up, if you enjoyed this video, take a second, tap that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already for more discussions like this one and so much more here on the channel. We love having you around and we hope that you'll join us for the next one. Until then, have a great night, everyone. Bye.